when that first recording session for Garlic Jr. was tons of fun. We still there's little inside jokes from back then that are still something you can say. If I see John Bergmeyer, I can go, "The pillars," and I don't know what it means anymore, but it used to make us laugh back in the day. I don't even know what it references at this point, but it's from that very first session.
Hi, everyone. This is Chuck Huber, the voice of Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho, Android 17 from Dragon Ball Z, and you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova podcast. Aloha.
Aloha and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and today I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest, the legendary and iconic, the one and only Chuck Huber. Chuck, how you doing today?
I am doing well. I am doing iconic. It's true. Android 17, Hiei, Dr. Stein, Kurogiri, Austria, Kululu. Like I've done over almost 300 roles in Japanese anime voiceover. And so, yeah, it is wild to think that I have voiced iconic characters. That is something I've learned to accept.
Yeah, I mean, just it's so wild. Like, do you ever have moments where you're just sitting back and you're like, damn, I did that. That's really like, like that surreal moment or feeling.
Yeah, well, the first time it happened to me was the very first time I signed autographs, which was someone at Funimation from the business side grabbed me in the hallway and said, "Do you want to go to they said a con?" And I didn't know what a con was. I knew what a Comic-Con was, but I didn't know what a con. She said a convention. And as an actor, I'd done convention work before. People who get booths at conventions hire actors, or typically in our industry, they'll hire booth girls, cosplay girls to help bring business to their table. So that's the job of the actor, is like to do presentations and stuff. So I thought I was going to promote Yu Yu Hakusho. I thought it was going to be like maybe talking on a panel, but mostly just sitting at a booth, passing out flyers or whatnot. And they were like, "No, Chuck, you're going to be signing autographs on, Saturday from 2 to 5 and Sunday from 1 to 3 or whatever it was." And I was like, that autograph promotion, that's not going to work. Nobody wants my autograph. What, we force my autograph on people? And they were like, "I don't think you understand what's happening." And I was like, I've been in this industry a long time, because I'd been an actor for 20 years by then, 15 years by then. So I was like, "Hey, listen, I know this industry. You guys don't know what you're talking about." And they were like, "Just show up." And so I showed up, and there was no one at the table. And I said, "See, this is stupid. This isn't going to work." And then they pointed to this line that was kind of held back from the table, and it sort of circled the whole whatever hall we were in. It was a small, not one of the giant halls, but it was a big enough hall that this line was. It was a lot of people in the line, and they were like, that's your line." And I said, "That's my line." "What do you mean my line?" They're like, "Those are the people who are going to get your autograph." And I was like, "What?" And then they kind of put a Sharpie in my hand and released the line to come to the table. And this girl, the first girl in line, first autograph I ever signed, she, obviously they'd been waiting in line for hours, and she was first in line. So it's good that happens that way, because she had a very important, special story. Her dad, they watched Yu Yu Hakusho together while her father was dying of cancer. And Hiei was their favorite character. And so she made that journey to meet me because of her love for her father, and because they shared this thing that I get to participate in. And so, like, that's that first realization where you're like, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with these people's moments in their lives. But I'm as the ambassador of the property or the brand or the character, suddenly you're pushed into this situation where you're responsible for your reactions to people. And she was a perfect first autograph because it set the tone for every autograph after that, which was, this isn't about me, this is about them. This is a very important moment for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here as a guide, as a conduit, as a mostly I feel what my job at the autograph table is affirmation, like affirming people,
Mm-hmm.
making they're lovable exactly as they are. And so those type of and then through the years, as anime has blown up, especially after COVID, when you start seeing Goku and Luffy in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, and you're like, that's global cultural brand awareness. That's people know who you are. And I can pretty much talk to anybody I meet
Mm-hmm.
and a Dragon Ball Z or My Hero Academia or just anime in general. Say, do you know anyone who loves anime? And they all know someone who loves anime if they don't love it themselves. And I people when you're given this role, this sort of semi famous role that we have as voice actors, there's ego parts that go along with it, and hopefully you work through it and you realize that it's just a really sweet gig,
Mm-hmm.
talking to people, and everybody goes through it. You're like, because it's very confusing to have a bunch of people that want to talk to you, and especially the old school conventions where they were in a hotel with a convention center attached, and you were one of 2 or 3 guests, and everybody knew who you were. So we'd get to walk around the hotel and immediate surrounding area and restaurants and feel what it felt like to be, an A-list celebrity, just for that week only. Not, it doesn't happen out at the mall or anything. I'm not, I'm not Brad Pitt. That's a totally different level, but we get a taste of it, which is nice because it shows, it shows you, it showed me how much it's that part is not really important.
Mm-hmm.
That part isn't what fuels me. But when COVID hit and suddenly everybody was watching anime, and suddenly my nephews and nieces, I got like 50 of them, they had never asked about prints or autographs, and suddenly they were like, "Can I get a Dr. Stein for my friend?" And so they were, the kids all tell their friends that their uncle or their dad or my brothers will text me occasionally and say, my brother's a regional distributor manager for a beer brewery, Lakefront Brewery. Shout out. My other brother's a SAT tutor, but he also drives Uber, and they will often tell me, of someone they met who loves Dragon Ball Z, and so they get to show off and share that their brother does something cool, and that's always very, I like that. I like that my brothers like what I do and can share it that way. But when it blew up with COVID, and everybody was suddenly watching it, it was a groundswell. It was a shift. It was like, oh wait, we're not secret famous anymore. We're a little bit more. You started having like NBA players with, Vegeta on their sneakers or whatever, or NFL players doing the fusion dance in the end zone. Like, then you're like, oh, holy cow, this is really a big deal. You got famous people who were kids, and now they're famous or successful athletes or whatever, and they're DBZ fans or Full Metal Alchemist or whatever it is. And so it's this weird, anime is in this weird position of being incredibly successful for the actors who are in it, culturally aware throughout the world, but we kind of get to exist anonymously, which is the really nice part. We get the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Although the pay is not as great as if I were an A-list movie star, I can tell you that much. But it's good enough. It's good enough to raise a family on. So that's all that I care about.
That's one of the things like I've heard a lot with a lot of the voice actors I've gotten the privilege of interviewing. Is like, while it does give like, a lot of name recognition opportunities, it doesn't pay that well. Is that, do you see that changing within the industry, or that's just kind of how it is?
I don't think Sony, Sony owns Crunchyroll. Funimation merged into just Crunchyroll brand now. And Sony was saved twice by Funimation. Once during the pandemic, and then once during the strike, because Texas is a right to work state. And so I don't think they would ever change the pay structure because it was too useful in an emergency to keep their their engine, their machine rolling. So I don't think that ever changed. What we do get is the conventions. That is the residuals that we get, or we're able to go to conventions. And fans pay us residuals directly by interacting and buying merchandise that we sign. And so in that respect, there's a direct relationship between us as the actors and the fandom in a way that other fandoms don't have. Star Trek to some degree, Star Wars to some degree, they have a similar relationship with their fans. I happen to have done a Star Trek property, Star Trek Continues, which was a fan series. But by fan-made series, I mean Rod Roddenberry came to set and said that his dad would consider it canon. I watched our premiere of episode 3 in Australia, sitting next to Nichelle Nichols.
Wow.
Yeah. Was it in Australia or was it LA? It might have been the LA premiere of the final. I can't remember. It all blurs in. But so the fandom for Star Trek, Star Wars, anime, very similar. Horror is another genre that has a similar fandom and similar convention structure. But yeah, we that the pay is not really ever going to change. It would be great. I would love to have a pension and residuals, and if everything I had done was paying residuals every time it was airing, I would probably be covered in ways that meant I didn't have to go to conventions. So I'm not sure I would want it to change. There's something to being, I mean, almost any of us in my position could literally find any spot in any city that has over 150,000 people and send up a Facebook ad and make their rent for the month just by telling people where you are and sitting and signing autographs and Funko Pops. So it's it makes us a little bit more entrepreneurial of trying to find ways to serve the fan base in positive ways that are also entrepreneurial. I teach classes, for instance, and there are a lot of people interested in learning about voice acting and acting, and so that's another sort of way I engage with the fandom and get them give back to them in ways that are appropriate and awesome. So yeah, I don't know if I would change it. I don't know, maybe I would. Would I just take residuals, or do I still want to go to conventions? I don't know. It's a tough call.
Well, speaking of you teaching, acting, voice acting, let's dive into that, and also feel free to completely promote it as well.
Sure, take my classes; they're awesome. Promotion done. ChuckHuber.org. Check it out. Send me an email.
So, speaking of that, like, what was the inspiring force for you to get into teaching acting and voice acting?
Well, I've been a teacher forever. I mean, I was a teacher for years when, I mean, I started when I was 15
Mm-hmm.
teaching at a YMCA summer camp. I taught different, you do different skills. I taught archery. I taught swimming. I taught, just camp stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that led into me doing other forms of teaching. But I really got into teaching when my oldest was starting to have a need to go to school. And we lived in Chicago, and Chicago public schools, not the greatest. And so we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see if we could get him into a private school, and we didn't have the money for it. And so I went to the St. Mary the Angels over in Wicker Park, Bucktown. And they had a great school. It was down the street from us. And I went and met with the principal. And I was like, you guys don't have a drama program. You know what you should do? You should let me be the drama teacher and let my son go here. And I said I would do like some classes. I could substitute. When I substituted, I could teach drama. And that I would do like a Christmas program and a spring program. And they were like, yes. And so that started my sort of regular classroom teaching. And as I had more and more children, I had to do more and more teaching in order to pay for their private school tuition. And I eventually, having so many children, ended up principal of a small private Catholic school here in North Texas called St. Bernadette Academy. And I did that for 7 years, all the while acting. But then as the internet became good enough to support face-to-face video conferencing, like we're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting in my room one day and I was like, you know what, I should start teaching online classes. And so I started with Facebook. I think I started on Facebook. I would go live on Facebook and I would read the students' chats to me. I would read the comments and I would do instructions, and then they would turn in work, and then I would come back the next week and comment on the work. And then eventually I started doing Zoom acting classes. And I was doing that 5 years before COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I was well positioned to handle the influx of people doing things on Zoom. And so I went from teaching about one class every other month. So I was teaching like 4 different classes every month, different teachers. So I had a Shakespeare teacher, I had a improv teacher, I had a business of voiceover teacher, I had my classes and my advanced classes. And so I was doing and producing, writing, producing, directing demos for people, which I still do. I've pushed back slightly from all the classroom teaching. I mostly do one-on-one or small group private coaching, just because I don't have to try to manage everything into a marketing window where everyone's going to join this class at this time. I can just kind of take clients as they come, and sometimes put together small groups or just teach people one-on-one. I may actually start teaching live here in the North Texas area. It's one of the things I miss. I've been teaching online for so long. I forget what it's like to teach live.
Okay. And like on average, like when it comes to doing these classes and the one-to-ones, like have you found any like people that have been your students that you would say could be like a breakout artist within the industry? Or
Yeah, I just did Tokyo and Tulsa, which is a big, very well-respected anime convention up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's been running for, I don't know, 20 years or something. And one of the guests there, Kiba Walker, was a former student of mine. So I have guested at conventions with former students of mine, which is always very fun. Generally speaking, it's a large swath of people who are casually interested in it. It's probably 60 to 80% are like, I want to see what this is like. I want to see if I can do this. I want to see. And it's a low bar entry to, like, it's a safe place. You can make mistakes. It's a very, very comfortable teaching environment for people to try it out. Like, is this what I want to do? So, 60 to 80% are people who are going to benefit a lot from the class, because learning how to perform and manage your adrenal stress and communicate effectively and take on challenges and be comfortable with failing and pick yourself up. Understand that mantra that failing is the only way to succeed. Like, you can't avoid failure if you want to succeed. You got to keep making mistakes.
Yeah.
And so that's, and I enjoy that. And anime has a high percentage of spectrum and to special ed and disability. So I get an influx of those people too, which is always, I've always taught in special needs communities my whole life. I worked as a foster parent, 24 on, 48 off, for a group home when I was younger, just out of college. So I was a foster dad to special needs. I worked at this place called Thresholds, which was about moving people out of group homes into their own living situation. And then I taught bilingually at the Alexander Graham Bell School for the Deaf. So it's always been a passion of mine, although I do enjoy teaching. And in the 20% that are like serious pros that take the class, it's always very fun to work with them, because there's a little bit more traction, a little bit less, a little bit more traction on the acting side and less on the sort of stage fright or adrenal side or just pure communication side. And so, and the class works in such a way that I can have, someone who's doing an episode of The Walking Dead next to somebody who's got a severe speech impediment. The class, they work perfectly well together in the class, right next to each other, because it's mostly individual exercises. There's some improv, duet partner improv stuff that we do, but that's minor compared to all the sort of individualized work that we do. Dialects, we do 3 different dialects. Do a monologue. We do finding your vocal range by matching you to someone who's already successful, and then you go in and replace their voice. So suddenly you're Nicolas Cage in National Treasure, or you're, whatever, you're in the Miyazaki movie. You've replaced someone in a Miyazaki movie, and you're like, then you hear your voice coming out of something amazing, and you're like, yes, I could do this. I sound like I fit in that movie. And so that's always fun.
Well, I was going to say, have you ever considered writing a biography on yourself? Because, like, you've done so much that I really feel like, a book, definitely, I think it would be a New York Times bestseller. But I think it would be very inspiring for people to be like, okay, he's done all this, and I can relate to that, the tangibility of it. But, like, I'm listening to everything you've done. I'm like, there's like no gaps where you're not doing something phenomenal,
I appreciate that. I do bite hard into life. I do chew. There's not a lot of, my wife and I joke. I mean, we have a house full of people with opinions and needs that they make sure are being met, because they're like us, we're like, we're not going to sit around and be like, oh, we don't know what to do. Everybody in our house is kind of driven. It's a little annoying at times, just because it's like, I'd love sort of a slacker kid who doesn't do anything, like, be a lot less skating lessons and ballet lessons and trips to pick up cars and sell them and all this stuff that all my kids do, carpentry and building houses, and one daughter's a teacher. Like, so they're all very high achievers, and so we end up with a lot of high achieving scheduling. So it's but in terms of like me writing a book about myself, I don't like me that much to write a book about myself. I will at some point put together probably a video series that is my teaching in video form, so that it can exist forever on the internet after I'm gone. I've tooled around with that a little bit, but most of my life, in terms of my experiences, gets put into my narrative fiction work with screenplays. in bits and pieces, nothing you'd recognize, but I take what I've experienced and been through and use it to good end in the different scripts I'm currently writing, or put it to good use. Right now, I'm producing on a movie called Mud Life, and
Mm-hmm.
it's my first time in like the big boy's chair as producer. I'm sort of running the show, getting the movie made, and I like it. I like it a lot. I'm very comfortable with it, and it's something that my life's experiences now go into this, because it's a lot of negotiating with people who all have different creative ideas and ends and goals. So it's a lot of listening to everybody and seeing how everybody can come together and work together, which is very enjoyable when it works out. And it's you get a little tense. You're like, is this going to work out? I hope it's going to work out. So far, so good. So we'll see.
Okay. So, if you're, I'm not sure if there are any NDAs in place about that movie that you're working on, but like, what
Really.
is Oh, okay, cool. Were you nervous going into the directing and producing that role?
Yeah, so I'm not directing. I'm just producing. But was I nervous? Yeah. So it's um, my friend who I've known for years is an Emmy award-winning writer, and he and his
Mhm.
writing partner, who also has 2 Emmy awards, they wrote this short called "Broke Down Drone," which
Mhm.
everyone should go watch. It's great. West Side Chicago, great West Side Chicago story. And the short is beautiful, and they shot it for super cheap. And so they were like, we should write a feature based on this short. So they wrote a feature based on the short. And a portion of the short kind of exists in a different form in the feature. So that's fun, because the spirit of the short is absorbed into the fabric of the feature. But yeah, I was nervous until, and I'm still nervous.
Mhm.
I had a call today with the president of a studio that we're talking about partnering with in terms of funding. And they gave us some numbers and some ideas, and I had to convey that to the rest of the team and figure out where we're all going to come down creatively. What would we give up in order to get funded? And of course, the answer is not really that much, but
Mhm.
the part of that, like, my job as a producer is to make movies happen. Um, so I have a much broader uh, gate through which ideas can enter. The director's got the narrowest. He wants these people. He wants it shot here. He wants it shot this way, and that's his job. His job should be that. My job is to try to see if I can filter what the business people think is going to make the movie sellable, because
Mhm.
they don't want to put money into something and then not be able to sell it. So they're trying to protect their interests. And so they have ideas of how to do that. And we have ideas of how to make the movie. And so now we just kind of rearrange the pieces until we get to the part where we start signing papers. And that'll make me nervous when we get to the part where we're signing paperwork, or getting closer and closer to making a deal happen. Because there's always this feeling of like, this may fall apart right now. This
Mhm.
deal may just go away because they don't like me, or I say something wrong. Like, you never know. So that it benefits, and it's one of the things I tell students all the time: being yourself, being the same on the inside as you are on the outside, which is my definition of simplicity. Things become complicated when you try to be different than you actually are. You start having to put on faces or acts for people, or you start not conveying your actual intentions because you're trying to protect feelings or get results. And it's like, no, just be yourself, and then you never have to lie or fake anything or try to massage or manage a situation. You just tell the truth, and let that do the work for you. One of my favorite phrases that I've heard recently was, Unspoken expectations
Mm-hmm.
are premeditated resentments. So if you're having expectations of somebody that you're not saying out loud, you're premeditating a resentment of them. Because if you're expecting something and it's not happening and you don't say anything about it, you're gonna feel resentment. And so that feeds into that idea of um, just being simple, same on the inside as you are on the outside, and that prevents a whole lot of. It makes communication so easy because when I'm typing these emails and I can just say what the truth is, and everybody responds to it. They're like, "Oh, that's so refreshing," or simple, or "Okay, well, I know how to deal with that." You're not. There's no artifice to it. We're just this is what it is. This is what we're gonna do, and then
Mm-hmm.
people make their choices based on that. So it's really nice. It's a simple way of working.
And I've noticed, like, especially now in the social media era, and especially for me dealing with other content creators, I've noticed that a lot of people like to put on a certain air with themselves, and it's like then when the lights and cameras are off, like they're a whole different person. And I just feel like that's so much extra busy work that if you just were just yourself 100% of the time, it would
Right.
be better. I've had instances where I've run into people and they're like, "Oh, I love your content," and I sit and talk to them. They're like, "Oh, this is like a 1-to-1. You're not any different." And I'm like, it's just I don't feel the need to do that extra work. So
Especially with podcasting, there's too much volume of work that you discover very quickly that it is much more energy efficient to be yourself than to
yeah.
put on too much. I get like, so when we're at conventions and doing panels and we're at the table, there's sort of an elevated performance
Hmm.
that comes into play. We're engaging people where they're at. They're here for, they want to hear the voice, they want to feel the personality. So there's an elevated sort of stage presence that happens that we get to, let go of,
Hmm.
back to the hotel room or whatever. And I don't think that's necessarily incorrect because I'm still being honest. I'm just being honest with, while knowing that people are going to want to hear, "Oh, I'm Emperor Pila." They're going to want to hear the performance. So there's a lot of performance interlaced with the conversations, but the conversations become real very quick. But there's generally a performance that the fan is doing when they walk up to the table too. They're nervous, or they're super excited. So they're at a high energy level too. And that's one of the things, we get a great amount of experience in dealing with people because we deal with people tens of thousands every year, for the past 20 years. And it gives you insight into how to communicate. And one of the simplest communication tips is mirroring, matching. So if someone comes up to you with energy that is, you kind of and meet them there. If someone comes up and it's like, "Hi," you go, "Hi." So you match
Hmm.
what someone is bringing you, and they feel comfortable with that. And that makes it, and once again, it makes it so that people feel heard and affirmed because you're not trying to impose your will on them. You're taking what their will is and trying to match it.
Okay. Well, I have a couple more questions that are going to be, I guess, the standard interview questions, and then we can get into the fun stuff. So I know, and for those who will listen to this or watch, this is the second time we're recording because I had a lot of technical issues on my end. So I'm
That's
just,
true.
it's an honor having you to come back on, and I know you're
I
very, very
forget what
busy.
I forget what our conversation was last time, but I remember it felt similar in feel and style to this, where we were just chatting about whatever.
Yeah. So your what was the I know this is a very standard question, but this is going to be one my audience is going to be mad if I don't ask
Sure.
it. But
No, we
like,
gotta do the regulars.
yeah. So what was the moment that you knew you wanted to become an actor?
When I was a little kid, Star Wars came out. I was
Hmm.
6, 7, 7. 6. And then Empire Strikes Back is the one I really remember. And after Empire Strikes Back came out, we wanted to film the Dagobah scene. So we need Luke, Yoda, and R2-D2. And so we built like an R2-D2 out of cardboard. And our friend Webb Tilney across the street had a rubber Yoda mask and did an incredible Yoda voice. My brother John was going to be Luke. And we had a swamp to film in, little Super 8 camera. And I thought I was a shoo-in for R2-D2. I think I had a verbal contract with my brother. If I'm being honest, I think my agent could take him to court over it. But the day of filming came, and they left. My brother was gone, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere by myself. But if I was with my brother, I could go into the swamp or wherever it was, the beach. We lived on Lake Michigan, so I couldn't go anywhere by myself. So the thing my brothers would try to do is they'd try to get out of the house without me, because they knew if they could get across the street, I couldn't find them. And so they'd be free of me for the day, and I'd just have to play in the yard. And that's what happened on the day of filming the Dagobah scene. They left me, and I remember feeling left and angry about it. And I had a little photomat camera with the little 4 flash bulbs.
Yeah.
Took a picture of the door where they had left, and I positioned the camera because the sun was coming in. Oh wow! So it was later in the afternoon, because I know that door faced west. I took a picture of where the sun was coming in, but I kind of I framed it so the sun was hidden behind part of the window. But I still have that picture, and it's still my picture where I was like, "I'll show you, regional beer distributor. I'll be the actor," because my brother John was widely considered the one who was the best at voices and accents and comedy. So had he not left me that day, I might not be an actor. You never know.
So the journey with getting into acting to going to voice acting, do you mind stepping in the DeLorean and we go through there? As long or as little as you want. It's up to you.
Yeah, I was an actor in Chicago for a decade. Worked on stage at Goodman, Steppenwolf, Court, all the big theaters in Chicago. I did. There are a couple big series in Chicago. I did a guest starring role on the 2-episode guest starring role on the Untouchables television series. I played, of course, a serial killer of children. I don't know why. I play a lot of killers. So that I had this whole Chicago arc to my career, which ended when my agent tried to get me to move to LA, and we took this trip to LA, and it went sideways in sort of really bad ways. He thought, because of what he showed me in LA and the people that we got to meet, we went and we watched Friends at Matt LeBlanc's house on his brand new crushed purple velvet couch that was delivered right before we watched the episode. And then we went out to dinner with him. We had lunch with Matt Damon, 2 old clients of his, and went to Joel Silver's office and met some people and met some other agents and stuff. And so he was certain I was going to move out there because he had shown me the world. So he kind of felt like he owned me at that point after he showed me everything in LA, and I was not. That's not how I was going to. He kind of made his intentions known, and I made it known that wasn't that he could go pound sand, and that ended that trip very quickly. I had to call my mom and say, "Can you get me a ticket from LA back to Dallas?" And then I'll need to get back up to Chicago. And when I got back to Chicago, because of how things had gone in LA, my career was over. My voiceover agent dropped me because they were a team, and I was doing really good doing voiceover work, commercial voiceover work, radio, television. Kind of my bread and butter. And none of the theaters would. I wasn't getting called for any auditions for the theaters. Couldn't get another agent. I just got blacklisted. It's a very tight
Wow.
community, and if you get sideways on someone like he and I got sideways, his fault, not mine.
Yeah.
Then that ended my career in Chicago, and so I told my children's mother that I said, "What do you want to do?" And she said, "I want to go to college." And I said, "Pick a college anywhere, and we'll send you to college." Because I was like, I'm pushing on a rope here in Chicago. I'm not getting back in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So a change of scenery was necessary. And she picked a college by my family here in North Texas. And so we moved here to North Texas. And, I got a job as a janitor, cleaning up a bar on the north side of Fort Worth called, how was it called? In the stockyards, it was called the Longhorn Saloon. And the way I would clean this saloon after every night was with a shovel and a leaf blower.
Mm-hmm.
You would shovel and leaf blow everything down onto the dance floor and then scoop it into garbage bags. And you had to clean up all the vomit in the bathrooms and everything. So it was, I went from doing guest starring roles in television to, shoveling garbage and cleaning up vomit. And
this is all going in your biography, right?
right. And then, we were struggling financially, and I hadn't given up on acting, but it was something that my children's mother, she's my ex-wife now, but she was not in favor of me acting, but we needed money. And I looked at some of the theater auditions, and I was like, I'm gonna, $300 a week, $200 a week. That was enough to pay some bills and get some groceries. So I was being a janitor and doing some theater work, and then got an agent. But it was started a theater company in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Moonwater Theater. And one of our company members came in one day and was like, "Hey, you should go audition for this Dragon Balls thing." And I was like, "Dragon Balls? Sounds like porn." And he was like, No, it's Japanese anime." And I'm like, "Okay, so it's definitely porn." He was like, No, it's cool. Call this dude. His name's Chris Sabat. So I called Chris, and he was like, "Yeah, man, come on in, audition. It'll be great." And I auditioned. Garlic Jr. was the first role I got. It's a little 5-episode arc, Garlic Jr., which is funny because I recorded that in 1997, 98.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still a character I record to this very day. It's like, so I'm still doing the same characters. So that is iconic. But so I didn't think it was a big deal. They said they paid $35 an hour. I was like, $35 an hour is great. I will do acting for $35 an hour anytime I can get it. We were very struggling in the new, we struggled in Chicago after I lost my acting career. But we were still struggling moving to North Texas. So $35 an hour was great. And, but it was such a janky operation. It did not say, I was used to Chicago, where it was like a receptionist and a sign-in sheet and like really nice studios. A hall, go to Studio 11B, and you'd be walked to Studio 11B. And you'd do your recording, and then you'd walk out and sign out and secure it. Like Chicago's got huge ad agencies. It's got a very tight studio game going on, and this was like a plastic table with a tiger blanket thrown over it, and with the computers on it for sound, sound attenuation. And then in the booth, they had a music stand with a T-shirt wrapped around it with clothespins holding it, so that the script wouldn't make noise on the, the T-shirt was there to keep the script from making noise on the music stand. And so, but good whisper room, good microphone, so quality equipment where it really counted. And so I was convinced I was never going to get paid. I was convinced, I was like, this is just a joke. This is not a real job. And like literally, I was walking out the door and he was like, "Hey man, hold on," and he like ripped a piece of paper out of a spiral notebook and he's like, "I need your address so I can send you a check." And I was like, "Sure, man." And then, I wrote down my address on this half-ripped piece of paper. And like a week later, it wasn't very long. Funimation used to pay. I think they used to pay every week, and that was one of the things that was great about it because you would like do a gig, and you would get the money the next week.
Yeah.
And the check came, and I was like, "Okay, game on, man. Let's keep going." And so just kept working from there. And then the next big show that came up after that was Yu Yu Hakusho. And everybody wanted big parts at that time, not because of the recognition from the fandom, but because it meant more hours in the booth. Like $35 an hour. If you got 10, 20 hours in a month, you're banking an extra $700. And it was regular, very, very regular work for years. It would ebb and flow, and then as it got more popular, and because it was kind of poo-pooed by the acting community, it was like, that's not acting, that's not interesting, or whatever. It wasn't TV, it wasn't film, it was denigrated. Not a lot of actors from the community were doing it. I was one of the first sort of serious actors that they hired, and as it became more popular, all the actors then started to want to get in on it. And of course, now tens of thousands of people want to get it. So it's very diluted. But back in the day, if you got a big role, you might have 8, 4, 10 hours a week. And suddenly you're like, I'm making an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month acting, which was massive back in the day. But yeah, it was... once they paid me, I was hooked. But I was also hooked because it was a lot of fun. When that first recording session for Garlic Jr. was tons of fun. We still there's little inside jokes from back then that are still something you can say. If I see John Bergmeyer, I can go, "The pillars," and I don't know what it means anymore, but it used to make us laugh back in the day. I don't even know what it references at this point, but it's from that very first session.
Awesome. And so definitely, like, another thing I want to ask is, like, there's and I know I brought this up in the last time we recorded, but I figure we might as well like round about to it.
Stuff, yeah.
Like, there's a stark difference in performances from your generation and the current generation of voice actors, and I really feel like it's just because of the acting background that your generation has versus a lot of people who have gotten into it now are more so just, I want to be a voice actor. And there's also like a difference I've noticed in, I guess you could say, and I'm trying to be very diplomatic about saying this, but like there's a difference when it comes to like when I talk to like the voices I grew up listening to, you, Chris Sabat, others, like very welcoming, very down to earth, humble. Whereas like a lot of the newer ones, sometimes, not all, please don't flame me, but not all, some can be very, there's a massive chip on the shoulder or ego. And I'm wondering if that's just a generational thing from my generation, or I'm not really sure what it is, but have you noticed that?
Well, there is, and that happens in all genres. I've been doing conventions for 20 years. And when I do the big Comic-Cons with some of the big name people that are there, and you're all in the same green room, sometimes super special people will get their own green room, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess he gets his own green room. But generally speaking, everybody is in the green, and there's always like it seems to be younger people who can't manage the ego bruising that happens from doing a convention, because you turn your notoriety or it becomes a very tangible thing at a convention. Your lines indicate how popular you are. And so there's sometimes I remember one in particular, I can't remember the actor, but he was from, I don't know, some vampire show or WB show or something. And he was in the green room, and he was, he's like refusing to come out until he had a bigger line. And which is something actors do sometimes. They'll take a break. Even I do it. If I'm at a show and there's not a lot of people, I'll be like, I'm going to go up to my room for an hour, and I'll put a sign that says, back at 2:00. And I go take a break for an hour, and I come back, and there's 3 or 4 people in the line because it says I'm going to be here at this time. So they show back up at that time.
Mhm.
And then I sign autographs for another, hour and a half, and then I go away. But for some people, that, and even for me in the beginning, it was there was sort of this rise,
Mhm.
and then it became financially important to have a large line, and there was all this, so there would be ego hurt that you would feel because you didn't know what others were doing to get a bigger line than you had, and so then you'd be like, but in terms of the acting, so everyone goes through that ego stage. So you may just be meeting people where they are at that point in their ego journey, which everybody has to go through. Everybody faces that thing where you feel bad because you want to be more popular, and you get, there's a row of you, and you can see very clearly who is doing better than who, and you're like, I want to be more popular. And so once you integrate that and you're not bothered by it anymore, then you're just not bothered by it. But in terms of the acting itself, it's a bit like there's a story that I love because I often look for these things in life. It's about the Easter ham. There's a family that used to cut off the front of the Easter ham and cook it in a separate dish. And so they'd have these 2 dishes of the Easter ham. And the daughter asked the mother, why do we do that as a family? And she said, I think, I don't know. It's just our tradition. We just do that. We cut the front of the Easter ham off and split it into 2 pans and cook them separately. And she said, why don't you ask Grandma? And Grandma, said, I don't know. Why don't you ask Great Grandma? So Great Grandma was still alive. And she said, oh, that's because my oven was too small. So there's things built into systems sometimes that come from a particular circumstance that isn't necessarily there anymore. And a lot of what happens with anime acting is that it's like the game of telephone. When anime acting started, it was a lot of what I would consider non-professional actors. Chris Sabat and Sean Schimmel are not professional actors. I think Schimmel was a professional French horn player, and Sabat was an opera singer. So they're not actors. They're great at the job of voice acting. They're great at the characters that they do, but they haven't studied. They haven't perfected the craft. They couldn't take a piece of Shakespeare text or break down a film scene. That's not what they're designed for. And to that end, the acting in anime, which directly comes from Japanese culture and directly comes from their theater. Kabuki has these large sort of emotional, these sort of strong reactions. And so that combined with actors who aren't necessarily as nuanced led to American dub anime having a certain style to it. And then as that style, which originally had sort of a kitsch and a quality, but very earnest, everybody was really trying hard with the best that they could and producing this style that ended up being sort of the early 90s, early 2000s anime. And as later and later generations come up, focused solely not on acting, but on being an anime voice actor in particular, which none of us really were back then. We were all doing all sorts of different things. That style gets repeated. And when you repeat a style and it doesn't have the sort of organic underpinnings to it, it can lend itself to making the style more brittle, with not as much sort of organic definition, and it starts to, the rigidity of the style. And then there's sort of the corporate aspect to it, because I always joked that Funimation's business model was simple. Their whole business model was make anime faster. That's their only job. They want to make more anime faster. And so that itself doesn't lend itself to a lot of nuance, or you gotta do it. You gotta do it quick. You gotta hit the flaps, and you got to hit the high notes and hit the low notes, and so it's go go go. Back in the day, we could kind of goof around. There was a lot of goofing around. We would schedule sessions for a long time, and we would burn through the lines, and then knock off or just goof around, and that led to a little bit more play in the early days. We got to play a lot more, have a lot more fun. It's really serious for people now, and it's serious up at Crunchyroll now too, because of the business model of make more anime faster. There is not a lot of breath in those studio sessions. You gotta be there. You gotta get the job done. The directors are under an incredible amount of pressure. Whereas in the early days, it was like, a Sabbath mostly taking smoke breaks back when he smoked. So, go ahead, take 15. I'm going to go outside. And you'd be like, what are we doing? Okay, we're just chilling. Cool. I'm getting there. So that's two sides of the same question, but I think that follows it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, because that definitely explains a lot. I noticed, like, with some of the newer talents that I've reached out to, or ones I've met at conventions, and like introduced myself, like, hey, here's my business card, and I've done X amount of interviews with such and such voice actors, and even ones at this convention, and it's just interesting with like the generation that I grew up listening to is like, oh yeah, I know that person. Like, okay, if they went on your show, you must be some, decent. Whereas with a lot of the newer ones, they're like, how many followers do you have? What's your sub count? What's your viewer average? Like, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, and that attitude comes out of, we are in a new environment. When we started, we were just thankful to have fans, and so there was a great service oriented aspect to our jobs at the conventions and the greater media surrounding the anime genre. And so we have a different attitude because we were very, very thankful for everything. And now it's a juggernaut, so they're looking to capitalize on it in a different way. So that's probably the difference you're feeling.
Okay.
They're just being good business people, probably. Some of them are a little stinky, but there's stinky people there.
That's so true. So when it comes to voice acting, with people who want to get into it now, I know I've talked to other voice actors that have said, like, you need to either be in LA or you need to be in Texas to be able to get, decent roles. But would you agree with that, per se, or is remote voice acting a viable field as well?
It's 100% viable. Andy Field, who taught my business of voiceover class, he booked his Marvel animation thing that he did and Five Nights at Freddy's. He plays Exotic Butters. I can't remember who he is, but I think that's the name. I say that out loud, and I'm like, that can't be a real thing. So he booked those remotely from his studio in I think he was in Missouri at the time. And now he does full-time voiceover work, traveling around in an RV with a portable studio that he records out of. So yeah, it's 100% possible. You are not going to end up in AAA Crunchyroll properties. To do that, you got to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Period. There are exceptions that are grandfathered in because, Laura Bailey lives in LA now, and they still want her for the 2 OVAs of Yu Yu Hakusho, and so they will let her record remotely. I think Oker-chan has a studio out there too, so I think they usually use the Oker-chan studios that are out in LA. But even then, it's LA or Dallas, and there's some other actors who are grandfathered in, and they may live in different places. I know Sonny Strait was up in where was he, Massachusetts for a couple years, but he was still recording from there. But generally speaking, if you want to work in the top tier anime properties, yeah, LA or Dallas, and then Sentai Films down in Houston also. They have like 8 studios running now, so they're cooking. All they need is one breakout hit, and they'll start to be competitive. they need a My Hero or a Dragon Ball Z that they get the rights to, and then their studio can blow up even bigger. But they do great work. And then New York has some. I think all the Pokemon is done out of New York, and Digimon. I think those are both out of New York. But yeah, there's plenty of work in the voice acting field to do remotely, but that won't get you onto any Disney productions or Funimation or Crunchyroll or any of those. You got to be in the neighborhood.
Okay. I mean that's definitely actually very important for me because I want to get into voice acting. I did do theater in high school and college, and I still also doing YouTube videos and podcasting. Like I have to keep those skills up to snuff. So I've just been wondering, I'm like, do I relocate my family to LA? And every time I go to LA, and I'm like, this traffic is just horrendous. Like we complain out here about like driving an hour and a half to go to the other side of the island, but like sometimes you can be in traffic in LA for like hours, and it's just trying to go somewhere that's,
Yeah, I mean, if you want my direct advice to you, I would say work on. You start with the audition process, and the audition process starts with where do I find auditions? On my website where it says masterclass, you click on that. There's a link on that page that opens a spreadsheet that shows you like 64 different places where you can audition online.
Mm-hmm.
And it includes the lowest tier, which is Casting Call Club, which is the Craigslist of voice acting. Anyone can post a job. Most of them are unpaid. Some of them are paid, but pay very little. Some of them pay decent. There's ACX for books on tape. There's a bunch of different e-learning sites. There's some of the traditional union casting networks, Actors Access. Those are the two big ones that the agencies require. And so you can start and get yourself up to speed professionally without ever having to move. For a lot of people, I say, if you're unencumbered and you can flop on somebody's couch until you can find some place to rent and put everything in a duffel bag and just go, well, go. If you've got family and you've got roots, build up your online presence and let the industry move you when it's time.
Okay.
If ever.
Okay. All right. So pivoting off of that, I definitely want to bring up because you have a fundraiser you're doing for Brittany's Smile.
Yes.
So I want to dive into that and give the floor to you and let you go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, Brittany is emblematic of many fans that I have met over the years, and I've done my best, as is my nature, to be as helpful to fans in need as I can. I have learned over the years that overcommitting myself ends up being detrimental to my mental health. So I used to try to help everybody, and I can't help everybody. So now I try to always be helping one person. So I help one person up to a certain point, and then they go off on their own, and I'm still friendly with them. But it's sort of like it's similar to the work I did in Chicago. And Brittany was she's a special needs, on disability, on Medicaid, mostly homebound, doesn't drive, spectrum. And she made it out to a convention in Conroe, Texas, Comic Conroe. And I can always tell. I'm like, ooh, this is a big deal for you being here. And she had made me a little plushie. And so I engage people in conversation. I try to get them to open up, especially if their communication is not as awesome as it could be. And so I usually, over the course of 3 days at a convention with someone like Brittany, start to help them practice talking. And it's very nervous to talk to somebody that you think is of high status and you consider yourself not of their status. And so it's a great opportunity. Conventions are a great opportunity for special needs people to walk around and learn social skills and communicate. That's one of the primary functions that anime conventions served back in the day, was all these sort of outcast nerds could find each other, and you'd see them pod up, and there'd be like one lonely kid sitting somewhere, and you'd see a group of like people all cosplaying, and he's maybe got, not the greatest cosplay, but he tried. And they'd see them like sort of standing there alone, and you'd see like this group of people go, "You're ours now." Boom, and they'd grab, pull them into their pod, and they'd like suddenly they have friends for the rest of their lives. I've seen that happen time and time again. So Brittany came up to the table and she'd made me this little plushie. And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much," and traded her because I could tell she didn't have money. You can always tell when people don't have money because they don't have any swag in their hands. So our big families, and there's like a mom with like a dad, and they got like 6 kids, and everybody's kind of a little disheveled, and they've got snacks packed in the, so like they're like trying to save every penny, and this was all they could afford. This is their big moment. And so I'm always very generous with families that I know can't afford. And Brittany, I knew couldn't afford. So I traded her plushie for some autographs, and we became friends. And I said, "Hey, you know what? You should make plushies for me. I will sell them at the table. And when I sell them, I'll Cash App you." I said, "I don't even need to take a cut. I just think it's fun to have your plushies on the table." So she started making me plushies, and she would send them to me, and she would come with me to conventions when I'm in the Houston area. And she would tell you herself, she has gone from not functioning at a level that she wanted to function at to now she's starting to see all these possibilities that are available to her that she didn't think were there. But the one roadblock she has right now to her next level is her teeth. Medicaid does not cover dental. They'll cover like major infections that, rot your jaw off. So they'll do the surgery to remove your jaw because the teeth weren't taken care of, but they won't pay to fix the teeth. It's the dumbest medical system in the world. It's honestly just criminal. And so we're raising funds to help fix her teeth. Quite expensive to fix all those teeth. We've raised about $2,000 now. We really need about $15,000, but our immediate first goal is to try to get to $5,000 because her 2 front teeth are not looking great. And if she had those looking great, she would really get her smile back and be able to get a job, because no one's going to hire someone that has that level of oral health. And so that's what I'm doing. And then once we get her over the line, the next person will show up in my life, and I will start sharing their story and helping them.
That's really good philanthropy work that you're doing there.
Yes, it is good for me. It is good to keep you humble and on track, and not thinking that you're owed anything. We are the ones who. So we gotta show up.
Okay. So winding down to the last couple questions that I have. First one is, when are we going to see you out here in Hawaii at a convention?
Man, I don't know. I would love to. Last time I was in Hawaii was for Amazing Hawaii, and I went with my wife, and we had an amazing time. And it was probably one of my favorite vacations. I think we stayed for a week, maybe 8 days. Convention was 3 days, so we had 4 or 5 days to goof around, and we went to the fish market.
Oh yeah. A ton of euros.
Yeah, you had to put on these boots that they gave you if you didn't bring your own, and just these giant fish, and everybody bidding on the fish. It was incredible, just a lot of fun. We went to the palace. We got a private tour at the palace with all what are the trees with the amazing, what are they called? The ones that look like they're from an alien world, and they're huge, and they have all
the palm trees, or no, not that.
What are they called? Anyway.
Yeah.
The beautiful, amazing trees that are on the island. And got a newfound love of Spam, that's for sure. Y'all know how to make some Spam taste awesome. that I know. But yeah, I would love to come to Hawaii. Tell all the conventions there. Bring Chuck out.
Yes. KawaiiCon. I know you guys check out this podcast as well as Amazing Comic Con and others. So you need to get Chuck on out here, and we will. I will definitely be pushing for that, because It's very interesting when I look at a lot of conventions here, like, and I've talked to a lot of the people that run the conventions. They're like, hey, we want to get more people out, but we don't necessarily know who to contact. And I'm like, can I just be the liaison? Like, just let me just like, I know so many people. I can get you directly in contact. I don't even need a finder's fee. Just let me help, because there's so many of us out here who would love to have you and so many other people here, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
They'll bring me. I'm putting it in the unit. They're going to bring me out now. I feel it.
Definitely. Okay. I guess one of the last questions I have is, since I know you play Halo, I know you're a gamer.
Yes.
How did you feel about Halo Infinite?
I am the laziest Halo player there is. I do Halo Quick Play, multiplayer, usually Husky Raid, or the Oddball. That's all I do. So I've never done anything beyond that, really. The reason I like the Halo Quick Play is because it's like I can jump on and game for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes and then be done with it. The last like serious game I got into was Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Oh,
but even
yeah.
the Spider-Man game had nice little chunks that you could like jump in. It wasn't like GTA or what's the other one? Fallout, where you got to grind.
Yeah.
You got to grind. You got to build. You got to like Spider-Man was similar to where there's a skill tree, but not a giant one. So I'm not going to have any information about Halo Infinite, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people dislike the campaign because it's kind of they shifted it from like being, I guess, previous Halo campaigns are more, here's the stage and you get through it and go from there, whereas this one's completely open world, and then multiplayer at launch was not the greatest, and people kind of wanted to go back to the old style. And I just feel like in this day and age now, when it comes to games, like they're either too much holding your hand, where it's like you can't I was saying to Lehua the other day when I forgot what game I was playing, but every couple seconds it interrupted me to just tell me exactly what I figured out on my own, and I'm like, let me play. I only have so much time before my toddler comes up and is like, nope, we're playing with slime. We're playing with Play-Doh. No, your time's up. And my daughter will literally tell me, you got 5 minutes. Oh, yeah. So with that being said, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
No, just thank you for being anime fans. We appreciate it. We get way more than we deserve for our jobs as voice actors, and that's it's a relationship. We both participate in it, and both worked hard to build the fandom. But I'm very appreciative of podcasts that shine a light on the genre and the fans who listen to them. So thank you.
Awesome. And do you want to plug your classes and anything else before we go?
Yeah. So givetaxfree.org, Brittany's Smile. That's the fundraiser I'm doing right now. My classes, you can check them out. chuckhuber.org. Masterclass. I'm terrible at updating things, so just send me an email. My email's on the website. Be like, Chuck, what's up? And I'll be like, let me tell you what's up. I usually set up little 5-minute, 10-minute Zoom calls with people who are interested and just chat with them and see if they're a good fit for the class. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. And with that being said, I'll leave links to everything down in the description below for this podcast within the show notes on all the podcasting platforms, and in video format. It'll be pinned to the first comment as well as in the description of the video. But with that being said, that's the episode today. Chuck, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be able to do this again with me. I know we had all those technical issues the first time. We went to 2 different platforms, and yeah. Technology. It's great, but it can suck at times.
I tell my students the only technical problem you will ever have is your belief that there won't be a technical problem. That's the only technical problem.
Exactly.
You gotta expect them for sure.
So, with that being said, people, we are signing out. We hope you have a blessed and aloha-filled day, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast or any of the other episodes that we've done so far, if you've enjoyed any of the conversations I've had with the guests that I've had on the show, or just general topics that you guys have thrown at me or that I've researched and we've just talked about on the show, then do me a solid. If you're listening on any of the major podcasting outlets, make sure you leave a comment, leave a rating or review, because it greatly helps out the show. If you're watching the show on YouTube, which airs every single week, then make sure you sub to the channel, youtube.com/@Mekel Kasanova, or just youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova, or even do us an even bigger solid by liking the video and sharing it with someone you think would find some enjoyment out of it. And all that being said, I hope you guys continue to enjoy this podcast and the content we put out here, because hey, we do it with a passion and we do it for you. So with that being said, I catch you guys on the next one. Stay safe, be blessed, and I'll see you around. Peace.